Recently, I compared the Radeon RX 9070 XT and GeForce RTX 5070 Ti head-to-head in 52 games, and I found that overall, they were very similar in terms of performance, which is why I was comparing them in the first place, because based on performance, they are direct competitors, or at least they're meant to be. As things stand today, there is a massive price divide between the two. The GeForce GPU now fetches over a 50% price premium.
Today's video is brought to you by the Gigabyte MO32U24, a high-end, high-quality gaming monitor using the latest 32-inch 4K QD OLED panel. This brand new pentatandem panel for 2026 features upgraded performance compared to first-gen QD OLEDs, including higher brightness, display HDR True Black 500 certification, and an advanced Obsidian Shield film that improves black levels and offers greater scratch resistance. This fast 240Hz monitor offers an elite gaming experience with beautiful HDR visuals and amazing motion clarity. Plus, it has one of the best feature sets I've seen on a Gigabyte monitor, including things like an OLED anti-flicker mode and a KVM switch. If you're after a pentatandem QD OLED, the MO32U24 delivers outstanding value with a great price in many regions. I recommend it, so to learn more, check the links in the description below.
As it stands at the time of making this video, the 9070 XT can be had for just over $700 US, with the cheaper models priced around $720 to $730 US. Meanwhile, the RTX 5070s, they start at $800 US. Most of them just over that, about $810. So that's about a 13% premium for the 12GB GeForce GPU in this matchup. So, as was the case with the previous 52 game comparison, I have benchmarked each game at two resolutions using two presets, some with ray tracing enabled and then disabled, so there is loads of great data to go over. Most of the testing has been conducted in-game using external performance measuring software, but for the examples where the built-in benchmark was used, we have labeled that on the graph, so you can compare with your own results if you would like to. Okay, let's get in the data. First up, we have 007 First Light, and here the RX 9070 XT dominates, outperforming the RTX 5070 by 36 to 46% across all of the tested configurations. It easily maintained over 100 FPS at 1440p and delivered a playable 57 FPS at 4K, whereas the RTX 5070 fell behind with just 42 FPS. Testing with LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, we see that the RX 9070 XT holds a consistent single to double-digit advantage over the RTX 5070. It maintains a 4% lead at 1440p with both presets, widening to an 8 to 13% advantage at 4K, alongside notably higher 1% low metrics. Pragmata strongly favours the 9070 XT across all configurations. Here the Radeon GPU commanded a decisive 31 to 32% lead using the standard max quality preset, and that advantage widened to nearly 40% when ray tracing was enabled, as we saw a sustained 76 FPS even at 4K. In the Outer Worlds 2, the 9070 XT maintains a solid lead over the RTX 5070 across all tests. It delivered a 31 to 37% performance advantage using the standard high-quality preset, but it also remained comfortably ahead by a 16 to 17% margin once we used the very high preset plus ray tracing enabled. In Arc Raiders, the 9070 XT consistently outpaces the RTX 5070, providing a 22% performance advantage at 1440p using the static RT, and then a 30% margin was seen at 4K. With RT Epic enabled, the 9070 XT maintained a solid 14% advantage at both tested resolutions. In Assassin's Creed Shadows, the 9070 XT holds a commanding 28 to 38% lead over the RTX 5070 across both tested presets and resolutions. Under heavier ray tracing at 1440p using the ultra-high preset, the Radeon GPU managed 55 FPS compared to the RTX 5070's 40 FPS, making the 9070 XT 38% faster. In Battlefield 6, the 9070 XT beat the RTX 5070 by an 18 to 22% margin at 1440p, while it widened that lead to 40 to 42% at 4K. The Radeon GPU sustained a smooth 63 FPS at 4K using the Overkill preset, whereas the GeForce GPU trailed with just 45 FPS. In Marvel Rivals, the 9070 XT consistently outpaces the RTX 5070 across all settings. It held an 11 to 22% lead using the medium quality preset, though those margins were stretched to 24 to 30% when Lumen was enabled using the ultra quality preset, where it reached 84 FPS at 1440p. In Crimson Desert, the 9070 XT consistently leads the RTX 5070 by a 13 to 22% margin. It delivered a comfortable 86 FPS at 1440p using the cinematic preset versus the 5070's 75 FPS. And it also held an 18 to 22% performance advantage across the 4K resolution with both presets. The 9070 XT controlled the leaderboard in F1 25, outperforming the RTX 5070 by roughly 30% across the rasterized high-quality settings, outperforming the RTX 5070 by roughly 30% when using the high-quality preset. But when we enable ray tracing with the ultra-high-quality preset, the Radeon GPU maintains a consistent 12% advantage at both 1440p and 4K. The 9070 XT maintained a massive 43 to 50% performance advantage in Cyberpunk 2077 at 1440p with ray tracing enabled. Then at 4K, again with ray tracing enabled, the RTX 5070 collapses to an unplayable 9 FPS average, allowing the 9070 XT to lead by nearly 190%, though neither GPU was particularly impressive under these quality settings. The Radeon GPU leads convincingly in Black Ops 7, beating the RTX 5070 by up to 45% when using the basic settings. Then with Extreme plus ray tracing enabled, the Radeon GPU maintained a comfortable 28% performance advantage at 1440p, and remained 16% faster at 4K. In Clair Obscur Expedition 33, the 9070 XT outperformed the RTX 5070 by 25 to 36% across both quality presets. At 1440p using the Epic quality settings, the 9070 XT delivered a smooth 64 FPS average compared to just 49 FPS for the RTX 5070. In Borderlands 4, the 9070 XT outperforms the RTX 5070 across the board, leading by 27 to 38%. At 1440p with the badass quality preset, the 9070 XT achieved 55 FPS compared to just 40 FPS for the GeForce GPU, and that saw it also maintaining a sizable gap at the 4K resolution. In Doom the Dark Ages, the 9070 XT holds a massive 29 to 50% lead using the Ultra Nightmare settings, but when enabling full path tracing, that does shift the balance at 1440p, allowing the RTX 5070 to pull ahead by 32%, with 25 FPS versus 19 FPS, so again, neither GPU was particularly impressive here. In Dying Light the Beast, the 9070 XT maintained a 7 to 12% lead in the standard rasterization tests, though that was expanded to 22 to 29% once ray tracing was enabled. It managed 62 FPS at 1440p using the Ultra RT preset compared to the 5070's 51 FPS. In Forza Horizon 5, the 9070 XT was dominant, outpacing the RTX 5070 by 31 to 37% across the board. It easily broke the 200 FPS barrier at 1440p with the ultra quality preset, and sustained a blistering 114 FPS even when maxed out at 4K. The 9070 XT was dominant in Forza Horizon 6, outpacing the RTX 5070 by a 36 to 38% margin using the extreme quality preset. Then with ray tracing added to the mix, the Radeon GPU stayed firmly ahead, holding a 29 to 34% lead across both resolutions. Final Fantasy appears to heavily favour the AMD Radeon architecture. Here the 9070 XT commanded a massive 50 to 57% performance advantage over the RTX 5070 across all tested presets and resolutions. The Radeon GPU comfortably sustained 103 FPS at 1440p with the ultra quality settings, whereas the RTX 5070 managed just 66 FPS. In Ghost of Tsushima, the 9070 XT commanded a 26 to 37% lead over the RTX 5070 across all presets. At 4K, using the very high quality settings, the Radeon GPU provided a smooth 78 FPS, whereas the RTX 5070 trailed with just 57 FPS. God of War Ragnarok heavily favours the 9070 XT. It led the RTX 5070 by a 28 to 36% margin across both quality presets. At 1440p, using the high settings, it delivered 143 FPS versus 112 FPS, and it maintained that commanding lead all the way up to 4K Ultra. Hell as Us sees the 9070 XT convincingly outpace the RTX 5070 by a 26 to 30% margin across the board. The Radeon GPU achieved 86 FPS at 1440p with the ultra quality settings compared to 68 FPS for the RTX 5070, and it extended that lead even at 4K. In Delta Force, the 9070 XT consistently outmuscles the RTX 5070 by a 14 to 25% margin across all test configurations. The 1440p Ultimate Quality preset saw the Radeon GPU deliver a high-flying 184 FPS average compared to 151 FPS for the RTX 5070. In PUBG, the 9070 XT consistently beat the RTX 5070 across the board. It delivered 14 to 22% better performance at 1440p, though those margins did shrink to just 6% at 4K. But across all tests, the Radeon GPU did provide significantly stronger and more consistent 1% lows. Testing with Counter-Strike 2 saw the 9070 XT leading by a 30 to 40% margin with the medium quality settings, while it held a very slight edge at 1440p with the very high preset. However, at 4K, using the very high quality settings, the RTX 5070 does flip the script to lead by 10% with 158 FPS. The 9070 XT did deliver a consistent 14 to 19% performance advantage over the RTX 5070 in Rainbow Six Siege, and this was seen across both tested resolutions and quality presets. It easily broke the 200 FPS barrier at 1440p using the Ultra Plus preset, and sustained over 100 FPS at 4K. In Warframe, the 9070 XT consistently outpaced the RTX 5070 across all settings. It provided a 15 to 23% lead at 1440p, and that widened to 22 to 26% at 4K, delivering high refresh rate performance and substantially stronger 1% lows. Performance is exceptionally tight in Overwatch. Here the RTX 5070 edged a slight 1 to 4% lead with the medium settings, while the 9070 XT took a 3% lead at 1440p with the Epic quality settings. Then at 4K Epic, both graphics cards landed in an absolute deadlock at 137 FPS. In Hunt Showdown 1896, the 9070 XT maintained a solid 21 to 25% performance advantage over the RTX 5070. Then with the medium settings, it reached 245 FPS at 1440p, while delivering a comfortable 55 FPS at 4K Ultra, whereas the 5070 only managed 44 FPS. In Helldivers 2, the 9070 XT maintained a steady 19 to 23% lead over the RTX 5070 across both the tested resolutions and presets. At 1440p Ultra, the Radeon card delivered a smooth 124 FPS compared to 104 FPS on the GeForce GPU. In NARAKA BLADEPOINT, the 9070 XT led by a 14 to 23% margin with the standard rasterization preset, and this was seen across both resolutions. But with ray tracing enabled, the race tightens up significantly, and here the 9070 XT held a 4% lead at 1440p, before the RTX 5070 took a negligible 1 frame lead at 4K. In Grand Theft Auto 5 Enhanced, both GPUs managed to hit the engine's frame cap at 1440p very high, but once the resolution increased or ray tracing was enabled, the 9070 XT pulled ahead, maintaining a consistent 6 to 11% lead over the RTX 5070. In War Thunder, the 9070 XT held an 18 to 22% performance advantage using the movie quality preset, and then once ray tracing was enabled, the Radeon GPU's advantage widened, and quite significantly, outperforming the RTX 5070 by 34% at 1440p and then 39% at 4K. Baldur's Gate 3 shows substantial wins for the 9070 XT. Here it beat the 5070 by up to 44% at 1440p with the ultra quality settings. More impressively though, the Radeon GPU delivered more than double the 1% low performance of the 5070 at 1440p using both presets. Testing with Windrose saw the 9070 XT delivering a convincing performance win here, leading the RTX 5070 by a 21 to 27% margin at 1440p. Then at 4K, that advantage expands to 37% with the Epic quality settings, and here the Radeon GPU maintained a smooth 78 FPS average. Ark Survival Ascended strongly favours the 9070 XT, which beat the RTX 5070 by roughly 46 to 52% across all tests. At 1440p EPIC, the Radeon GPU delivered 38 FPS versus just 25 FPS on the 5070, alongside significantly stronger 1% lows. Red Dead Redemption 2 heavily favours the Radeon architecture. Here the 9070 XT beat the RTX 5070 by a 29 to 36% margin across all tests. It provided an impressive 83 FPS average even at 4K Ultra, while delivering vastly superior 1% lows. In Fortnite, using the performance mode, both GPUs hit the CPU limits at 1440p, before the RTX 5070 edged a 5% lead at 4K. Switching to the EPIC preset with ray tracing enabled flips the results back towards AMD, with the 9070 XT leading by a 5 to 11% margin. In Resident Evil Requiem, the 9070 XT commanded a decisive 26 to 35% margin across all configurations. Enabling ray tracing doesn't slow it down too much. Here the Radeon GPU remained roughly 29 to 30% faster than the RTX 5070. In Mafia the Old Country, the 9070 XT dominated by a 29 to 40% margin with the medium settings. Then with the EPIC quality preset, the RTX 5070 suffered severe memory bottlenecks, and this allowed the 9070 XT to almost double its 1440p frame rate and deliver more than twice the performance at 4K. In Halo Infinite, the 9070 XT consistently outperforms the RTX 5070 across all tests. It commanded a 32 to 36% lead using the medium settings, and it produced a healthy 19 to 26% advantage when using the ultra quality settings with ray traced shadows enabled. The Radeon GPU maintained a steady 22 to 27% advantage over the RTX 5070 in Monster Hunter Wilds. It achieved a fluid 81 FPS at 1440p Ultra with ray tracing high enabled, while offering a very playable 49 FPS at 4K Ultra RT. In City Skylines II, the 9070 XT leads the RTX 5070 across all of our tests. For example, at 1440p medium, it commanded a 33% margin, though the margin did tighten at 4K with the high quality settings, where both GPUs hovered closely to around 31 to 32 FPS. In Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, the 9070 XT held a comfortable 10 to 20% performance lead over the RTX 5070. It provided a smooth 106 FPS average at 1440p using the ultra quality settings, and maintained a playable 62 FPS average at 4K Ultra, where the 5070 did fall behind. Here we see the 9070 XT maintaining a strong 30 to 33% lead in The Witcher 3, though with ray tracing ultra enabled, the Radeon GPU did manage to stay ahead, but to a lesser degree, posting a 16% performance advantage at 1440p, and then a 28% margin at 4K. In Space Marine 2, performance is very tight at 1440p. Here the 9070 XT just edged out a slim 4% to 6% lead, though pushing up to 4K did allow the Radeon GPU to stretch its legs a bit more, providing a 14% advantage with the Ultra settings and then 16% with Medium. In Starfield, the 9070 XT held a decisive 28 to 44% lead over the RTX 5070 across all of our tests. It delivered a solid 86 FPS at 1440p Ultra, and maintained a playable 58 FPS at 4K Ultra, leaving the 5070 trailing well behind. In Star Wars Outlaws, the 9070 XT led by 17 to 26% with the medium settings, and then with RTX Direct Lighting Ultra enabled, the 9070 XT provided a 9% lead at 1440p, but pulled massively ahead at 4K, where the RTX 5070 completely collapsed, presumably due to memory pressure. In Spider-Man 2, the 9070 XT outpaced the RTX 5070 by a 29 to 33% margin with the very high preset, but even with ray tracing ultimate enabled, the Radeon GPU remained in front, leading by a 24% margin at 1440p and then 20% at 4K. In Stalker 2, the 9070 XT maintained an 11 to 12% lead at 1440p across both of the quality presets, and then at 4K that margin expanded to 18% with the EPIC quality preset and then 22% with medium, and this was supported by noticeably better 1% lows. Finally, in Indiana Jones, the 9070 XT led by a 19 to 25% margin using the Supreme Quality preset. However, If we enable full ray tracing with the Supreme Quality preset, this allowed the 5070 to pull ahead by a 10% margin at 1440p and then 19% at 4K. Across the 52 game average, the 9070 XT demonstrated consistent superiority over the RTX 5070. It delivered 24% greater average frame rate performance at 1440p, and it extended that margin to 25% at 4K. And that was along with generally better 1% low performance. Before wrapping things up, here's a look at the cost per frame data. Based on the 1440p results, the RTX 5070 is coming in at a 37% premium, and that margin grew slightly to 39% at 4K. That makes the 9070 XT substantially better value at current prices. And as a side note, here in Australia, the 9070 XT and RTX 5070 are price matched, making the Radeon GPU around 25% better value in terms of cost per frame. There's not too much more to analyse on this one. Features like DLSS certainly don't come close to justifying the kind of price premium you have to pay in order to secure the RTX 5070, and I can't envision a gaming scenario where I would buy it over the cheaper 9070 XT, which in my opinion is just all around a better buy. Even at price parity, the 9070 XT is a much better deal. Not only is it generally much faster, but you also get 16GB of VRAM, and that's a precious commodity right now. The 12GB buffer of the 5070 has always been a little bit questionable, and at a severe price premium, it should be a hard no from gamers. I genuinely cannot come up with a single realistic justification as to why any gamer would pay a premium for the RTX 5070 over the 9070 XT. And this is a problem because the RTX 5070 was Nvidia's last viable GeForce GPU in my opinion. The RTX 5070 Ti is now priced at over $1,100 US, making it 50% more expensive than the 9070 XT for roughly the same level of performance. Meanwhile, the RTX 5080 has been a horrible proposition for a long time now, and at the current $1,500 US asking price, it's a joke. And let's not even discuss the RTX 5090. In fact, as I wrap this big benchmark up, the RTX 5060 Ti 16GB has now crept up to $750 US, though most models are already at or above $800 US, so about the same price as the RTX 5070, and more crucially, a lot more than the 9070 XT. And that means in the time that it took to make this video, which was a few weeks, the 5060 Ti 16GB has gone from about $580 US to around $800 US, an almost 40% price increase. We're not shocked by this, I mean, we kind of are, but what I mean to say is we knew this was coming well ahead of time and we reported on it in last month's Q&A series. It was published about 4 weeks ago now. So that's it really. GeForce pricing is so broken now that the only viable option for gamers is the Radeon RX 9070 and 9060 series of GPUs, not the 9050. So if you need a GPU right now, make sure you do grab an RDNA 4 model while you can. And that is going to do it for this video. If you liked it, you know what to do. Subscribe for more content. We might have a look at the 5060 Ti 16GB versus the 9070 XT. Not sure if there's much point to that one. I'm not sure, but let me know what you guys, if you want to see that comparison, and perhaps I can make that in the next few weeks. But yeah, otherwise we have the join button on Patreon if you want to become a Harbour Unboxed member. It will give you access to our exclusive Discord server, monthly live streams, Q&A stuff, and behind the scenes content. So check that out if you're interested. If not, that's perfectly fine, and I would like to thank you for watching this video. I'm your host, Steve. See you again next time.